You are listening to The World As I See It podcast. 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 As I See It podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome back to The World As I See It. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm super excited about this episode because I've received some fantastic questions from all of you, and I can't wait to dive into it and share my perspective. It's so cool that you're curious about my life and that you feel comfortable enough to ask these things. So, without further ado, let's get into it. And before I jump into it, I just want to remind you that send your questions. If there's anything you want to know, anything at all, you can put it in the comments below, or you can send it to my email at theworldasiseeitpodcast@gmail.com. Okay, let's get into it. So, I had a question from a listener, and they were asking me how I navigated the stage in a school play, and it's something that I've had to learn. I was in one school play and then a play at a summer program, and the way that I approached the stage, it was a little different each time. So in my school play, which was 9 to 5, my big scene was my role as a narrator. So I was not on the stage, but I would feel the cues in front of the stage to know exactly where I was supposed to stand. There was a special clue that I felt to know this is where I need to stop and stand. But for a few scenes, though, I was on the stage, and my big moment was acting like a dead body. And I have to quickly get onto, the desk, and the cast members, they'd cover me with a sheet. And I'm sure a few times my toe wiggled. Okay, it's hard to act like a dead body. I'm just saying. It was hard for me because you had all the sounds around you, which I tried not to think about what I was doing because I felt like if I thought about it, I feel like I would move more. So I tried not to think about it, but when there's people in the audience and, you just gotta try not to react. So when the scene was done, I had to, we had to pull the sheet off and get off the stage. And it felt very fast because they had a setup for the next scene. And I'm sure it wasn't rushed, but it definitely felt like it. It's, it requires so much trust to know, your fellow actors, they would guide me safely. And, that they get me off in the right place so that I wouldn't mess up the scene. And they did very good, I might add. So, I also did another play, and I did this at a summer program at a school for the blind. I was on the stage quite a bit, and I even had the lead role. And the way that I navigated that stage, was by using my cane to find props. And that's how I would know where I needed to be. And I also had a sense of, my position on the stage by listening to how many people were around me and where everyone was standing. And that experience felt so empowering because everyone was in the same boat. And we all worked together to make the show amazing. And it just takes a lot of practice to learn how to navigate that way. Speaking of personal life, a listener also asked what qualities I find attractive in a person. And since I am completely blind, visual things like a person's height or eye color, it's not a factor for me at all. Instead, my idea of attractiveness, it comes down to the person's personality. And you can tell so much about a person just by how they speak and the way that they act. And I pay attention to the sounds, of their voices. Is it warm and kind? I also notice their sense of humor and how they treat other people. For me, a great personality, it's what makes someone truly beautiful. I don't go based off by looks. I go, by their personality. Somebody may look attractive, but their personality is, not great. And I'm not trying to say that in, a mean way. That's just my personal opinion. When it comes to the kind of life that I want to build for myself, a listener also asked about my career goals and if there are careers that, I would not be comfortable pursuing because I can't see. I have a lot of passion for this, broadcast journalism. And, this is it. I have a lot of, this is a great question. I'm super passionate about telling stories and sharing information with the world. And that career, it really speaks to me. And I also think that I would like a person who reads audiobooks. I also think that I would really enjoy that as well. And I feel like my own life experiences, it could give me a unique perspective on so many topics. I love to tell stories, about people. And, they're not always the headlines. But I don't know for sure what career path I want to take. That is just something that those are just the two things that I have thought about. And of course, when I think about careers, I also think about which ones, would be challenging. I don't think that a lot of careers are challenging at all. I feel like whatever you want to do, you can make it happen. I do think that any job that relies purely on visual information would be very, very difficult, like being a pilot or a professional driver. But I don't see those as limitations. I don't see visual things as limitations. Now, obviously, I can't drive or be a pilot, but maybe in the future when technology becomes so advanced, there would be a way. But I try not to look at the limitations. Instead, I choose to focus on careers where my other skills, like my listening skills and my creativity and my ability to connect with people, it would be a huge asset. And I've watched, reporters on TV, or I've listened to people on the radio, and I just think that it would be very fun. But I also think, recording audiobooks would be very fun too. Now, I get asked a lot about how I use a smartphone or computer. And it's actually very similar to how, a sighted person uses theirs. I just do it in a different way. So I use the same, iPhone, and I use a regular Windows computer that everyone else uses. So the technology is already built in. So on my phone, I use a feature called VoiceOver. On Android, it's called TalkBack. VoiceOver, it's a screen reader, and it reads everything on the screen out loud to me. So when I touch the screen, the voice will tell me what app my finger is on, and I can double tap it to open it. It's the same on my computer. The screen reader tells me what's on the screen, so I can navigate it and I can type emails or do schoolwork. It may sound complicated, but it's very intuitive, and it allows me to stay connected with friends on social media and do everything that I need to do for school. Another great question that I got was, how do I navigate a new space or new environment? While I am very independent, entering a new building or room I've never been into before can be overwhelming sometimes. I can't just glance around to see where everything is. Instead, I have to rely on my cane to feel my way around the room. And I also use my other senses, like listening for where sounds are coming from, basically trying to build a mental map of a space. And it can be nerve-wracking sometimes. And sometimes it can be very, very hard, especially when there is a lot of people around and I'm trying to figure out where I am and, get a picture in my head of that environment. And sometimes it can be hard with a big crowd. But it's also a process that it makes me feel more confident. Once I learn that new environment, I feel so confident. It's a reminder that even when things feel difficult, I have the tools and the confidence to figure it out. And it's a little, sometimes it's a little bit of a puzzle, and solving it it's very rewarding. And this all brings up a lot of misconceptions that people have about being blind. So, a listener asked, what is one thing that I wish sighted people knew, but sighted people get wrong about blindness? And it's such a great question, but when I sat down to think about it, I realized I had more than just one thing to say. So, I'm going to share a few of the top misconceptions or things that I wish sighted people knew and that come to mind. My number one thing that sighted people get wrong, and this doesn't happen every day, and if you have done this, it's okay. It is when people, they speak to a family member or friend who is with me instead of speaking directly to me. And I've had it happen so many times. I've been at restaurants where, they'll find out that I'm blind, or they'll know that I'm blind, and they ask my mom or friend, what does she want, or what would she like to drink? And I'm always the one answering, because I can advocate for myself. And it is incredibly frustrating because they're talking about me as if I'm not even there. I can speak and advocate for myself, and I wish people would realize that. Another thing that some people think is that just because we're blind, we're helpless. We can't do anything on our own. And it is so frustrating. It's a frustrating misconception. I remember a time when I was at an event and I was sitting next to a friend, and across from us was somebody that we didn't know very well. We had spoken, but we didn't know each other very well. And when our drinks were brought to the table, I reached for my straw, and the girl I didn't know, she grabs the straw and starts to put it in my drink for me. I knew exactly where my drink and straw were and how to do it. And I told her, I was like, hey, I got this. And, she gave it back. But a lot of people, they just assume that because we are blind, we are helpless, and they don't ask us if we need help first. They just do it. And it's always best to ask someone if they need help before just stepping in. Another big one, a big misconception, is that my senses, they're not heightened, or you can say that they're not a superpower. And it's a common idea from movies, but it's not quite true. My senses, they aren't magically stronger. I have just learned to pay more attention to them. So, for example, my hearing, it's not naturally better than a sighted person's. But I just listen more carefully to things like footsteps to know who is in the room, or the sound of a bus to know when it's approaching. I've also learned to listen for, subtle sounds of an elevator arriving, which helps me a lot. And my senses aren't heightened, but I've learned to become more in tune with them, I guess you could say, because I can't see. So I have to rely so much more on those senses. So I've learned to use them and to focus on those senses so much more. And I'm just more in tune with it and can focus on listening. And some days it's hard. Like, crossing streets, weather can impact that. So some days it's harder than others, but since I've relied on my hearing so much, I don't have any other option. I just listen really, really hard and listen very carefully. People get it wrong when they think that my life is just this horrible reality where I can't have fun. And the truth is quite the opposite. I'm not just sitting here in the darkness doing nothing. I'm a very social person. I love to go out and experience the world in my own way. And it's all about how you choose to experience the world. And I find a lot of joy in my life. And I just want to say, for anyone out there who might be losing your sight, or if you've had vision and you've lost it, I'm here to tell you that your life is not over. You can still have so much fun, and you can still enjoy life. And it may just be in a different way. And don't worry about saying words like look or see. I wish that sighted people understood this more. I use those words all the time myself, and they're just part of our language. And you're not going to hurt my feelings by using them. A lot of the time, and it doesn't happen all the time, but I will be talking about a movie and I won't say, did you listen to that movie? Instead, I will say, did you watch it? And they'll get confused or correct themselves. And I'll just say, hey, you don't, it's okay. Like, you can use those words. It's not a big deal. And it's just part of how we communicate. So, you can use the words look, see, watch around me. I use them every day too. And finally, people often wonder what it's like to dream, or if I can see anything in my mind. The truth is, I probably do dream, but honestly, I don't remember them. And whenever I do dream, I don't see in my dreams. They're full of, sounds, smells, feelings, and emotions. I can feel myself running or hear people talking, and my dreams, they're not as real and vivid as a sighted person's. It's another way that my life is just normal, even if it's experienced in a different way. But I'm literally going to be honest, I don't remember any of my dreams. I don't even know if I dream half the time because I don't remember them. So, and even when I do dream, I may wake up and remember it for a few minutes and then I'll just forget it. I don't remember dreams at all if I do dream. That's all for our Q&A special. Thank you so much for listening. I love to educate and share my perspective on things. And if you have a question or an idea for a future episode, anything, it can be anything, I promise you will not offend me. You can put it in the comments below, or you can send me an email at theworldasiseeitpodcast@gmail.com. Stay curious and keep listening.
You've been listening to The World as I See It podcast.